So I've talked about malaria before on here, but one of the drugs that is used to treat malaria has a very interesting mechanism of action. So malaria is a intracellular parasite, which means it colonizes the inside of your cells, in malaria's case, the red blood cells. And your red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen around, and they do this by using the hemoglobin protein. So the hemoglobin protein has basically a bunch of protein domains and a heme group that is not really protein. What the malaria parasites want, they want the protein. They want to degrade this thing and take all of its amino acids to use for itself, but they don't want the heme. So this is the heme group. The parasite doesn't want this, it can't use it, it doesn't like it. So what it does in order to not be poisoned by it is crystallize it into hemozoin. The hemozoin is essentially a non-toxic waste product that is stored within It is stored within digestion vacuoles to be disposed of later. So the parasite gets rid of all of the toxic heme while still being able to use the proteins. So, in order to treat malaria infections, there's this medication called chloroquine, or chloroquine, or whatever, chloroquine, however you want to say it. Basically, what this does is it stops the parasite from being able to turn heme into hemozoin. So, instead of being crystallized to the non-toxic form, the heme just accumulates within the cell without being able to be removed. Or not within the cell, within the parasite, I guess. The heme accumulates. But even more interestingly, the chloroquine then binds to the heme that is built up in the cell, and it forms a compound that is even more toxic than the original heme. So the chloroquine heme complex is very cytotoxic, and that causes the host cell to burst, cell lysis, and then the malaria parasites, they're not fully developed, so they can't survive. Now, while this is very interesting, very good, very helpful in the treatment of malaria, evolution in nature is a fucking arms race, so of course there are now strains of malaria that are resistant to chloroquine, mainly by just either pumping them out of the cell, being like, no thank you, we don't want this here. So the chloroquine can actually do its thing because it's not in the area in which it needs to do its thing. But regardless, this is a very interesting drug mechanism for a very interesting parasite.